Hello everyone, welcome back to Eerie Hour. Today I return with long cruise ship stories that may make you think twice before ever booking your next ocean trip. In this episode, we will dive deep into the unsettling side of the sea with 8 terrifying tales that happened aboard luxury liners, all adapted from true events shared by passengers who survived them. Each story has been carefully researched, taken from the chilling experiences of those who discovered that a cruise can shift from paradise to nightmare within hours. From unexplained vanishings in the middle of the night to people who stalk the endless hallways, these accounts uncover the dark truth hidden beneath the polished image of the cruise industry. To protect the privacy of those involved, some names and details have been changed, but the horror at the heart of these events remains untouched. If you are new here, make sure to subscribe to Eerie Hour for daily stories of real terror that will leave you uneasy about every vacation you plan. Turn on that notification bell so you never miss when the shadows call, because the waters hold secrets far darker than you imagine. I had been waiting for this trip for months, a full 7-day cruise through the Caribbean on the Royal Majesty, a ship large enough to carry more than 3,000 people. As a software engineer from Phoenix, I rarely allowed myself real vacations. This was supposed to be my chance to unplug, step away from work, and maybe enjoy a few books while floating on blue, endless waters. I booked a simple inside cabin on Deck 7. Nothing fancy, just a small but comfortable space for one traveler. The room had a queen bed, a desk, and enough storage for a week's worth of clothes. After exploring the ship the first day, trying out different food spots and watching the sunset from the upper deck, I went back to my room exhausted but happy. The gentle sway of the ship was strangely comforting. Unlike those who get seasick, the ocean's rhythm seemed to pull me into the best sleep I'd had in years. By 10:30 that night, I was in pajamas, teeth brushed, ready to sink into bed. I locked the door carefully, engaging both the deadbolt and the chain, because even though I felt safe, years of living alone made me always double-check. The room felt snug, secure, almost like my own private little sanctuary. I slept deeply for the first few hours, the kind of sleep where you lose track of everything. But then, sometime in the early hours, I drifted toward waking. It wasn't sudden, more like a slow return to awareness. My eyes stayed shut, my mind heavy with sleep, when I noticed something. Breathing. Not mine. Someone else's. Slow, steady, human breathing, and it was coming from inside the cabin. My eyes flew open. The room was dim, the only light the faint red glow of the digital clock on the nightstand reading 3:17 a.m. I held my breath, listening hard, praying I had imagined it. But the sound was real. Someone was in the room with me. I turned my head slightly, and in the shadows I saw it, a shape sitting in the chair by the desk, completely still, facing my bed. My heart pounded so loud I thought it might give me away. How long had they been there? How long had they been watching me sleep? I tried to breathe evenly, pretending I was still asleep, my brain racing. Did I forget to lock the door? Did housekeeping give out the wrong key? Could this be some horrible mistake? Then, the figure shifted slightly, and in the faint light spilling from under the hallway door, I caught pale skin. Not a crew uniform, not security, just a man. My hand crept toward the lamp on the nightstand. If I could flip it on fast enough, I might startle him, see his face, scream for help. The walls in these rooms weren't thick. Someone would hear. Just as my fingers found the switch, the man spoke, his voice low, a whisper. "I know you're awake, Marcus." He knew my name. Hearing it from a stranger in that dark room sent ice through my veins. I snapped the light on. The man was middle-aged, average-looking, dressed in khaki pants and a polo like any other tourist. His hair neat, clothes clean, eyes calm but piercing. He looked so normal it was terrifying. "Who are you?" I managed, my voice shaking. "How did you get in here?" He smiled casually, like we were sharing a joke. "You sleep very soundly, Marcus. I've been here almost 2 hours." My stomach dropped. 2 hours. This man had been sitting in my room, in the dark, watching me sleep. "What do you want?" I asked, slowly pushing myself upright, scanning for a way past him to the door. "I wanted to see if you're as interesting asleep as you are awake," he said lightly, as though talking about the weather. "You talk in your sleep. Did you know that?" My hand darted for the phone to call security, but he moved quickly, covering the receiver with his hand before I could. "I wouldn't do that," he said calmly. "We're still just getting to know each other." My voice cracked, but I forced the words out. Get out of my room. Get out now or I scream." He tilted his head, considering. "The walls aren't as thin as you think. Most of your neighbors are drunk by now. But if you want to test it, go ahead." The way he said it made me realize this wasn't random. He had done this before. He knew the ship, knew the routines, knew how to stay hidden. "Look, I don't have much money," I tried. "Take my wallet, it's on the desk." He chuckled softly. "I don't want your money, Marcus. I want to know you. I've been watching you since yesterday. You travel alone. You don't talk much. You read during meals. You're like me, an observer." His words crawled under my skin. "I'm nothing like you," I spat. He ignored that. "We both prefer to watch, but the difference is what we choose to watch." Eyed the door. If I moved fast, maybe I could make it, but he seemed to sense my thoughts. "It's locked," he said. "I bolted it when I came in. You'd have to get past me first." My heart sank. "How did you even get in here?" "Master keys aren't only for crew," he said simply. "Security on ships is mostly an illusion." He stepped closer and I pressed into the headboard. "What do you want from me?" "I want you to realize privacy doesn't exist out here," he said. "Your cabin, your belongings, even your sleep. None of it is safe. People like me can come and go." The word hunting left his mouth and sent a chill through me. "Are you threatening me?" I asked. His calm tone never wavered. "I'm teaching you. You should understand the environment you're really in." I could hear faint laughter and voices in the hallway. Maybe I could shout. But he spoke again, cutting off the thought. "The couple next door came in drunk 10 minutes ago. They're asleep. Across the hall, a family with 3 kids. In bed since 9. Nobody's going to help you." He had been watching all of them too, tracking their movements, studying them. "What do you want me to do?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He smiled. "I just want you to remember. Remember I was here, that I could have done anything, and that tonight I chose not to." The weight of this time made my blood freeze. He walked toward the door, pulling out a small card that looked like a hotel key. "Master access," he said, holding it up. "Works on most modern cabin doors." He unlocked the deadbolt and chain with ease. Before stepping into the hallway, he turned back. "Enjoy the rest of your cruise, Marcus. Try not to sleep too soundly." Then he was gone, the door closing softly behind him. I jumped up, relocked everything, shoved the chair against the door, then called security. By the time they arrived, he was long gone. The officer checked the cameras, but, of course, the one covering my hallway had been down for hours. They seemed doubtful, but logged the report. I didn't sleep the rest of the trip. Every night, I sat awake in that chair, watching the door, jerking at every sound. By day, I scanned the crowds, sure he was watching me from somewhere. On the last night, I found a note slipped under my door, plain, typed, on ship stationery. "Sweet dreams, Marcus. Until next time." I never stepped on a cruise ship again. But even at home in Phoenix, I wake some nights certain someone is watching me. I remember his words, that privacy is an illusion, that people like him can come and go as they please. And the worst part is knowing he was right. Security is often nothing more than a thin layer of comfort. Whether in the middle of the ocean or in your own bed, once someone decides to target you, the line between safety and danger is frighteningly thin. The music was pumping, the drinks were flowing, and for the first time in months, I felt completely free. My best friend Megan had convinced me to take this girl's trip to celebrate my recent divorce. "You need to remember how to have fun," Megan kept reminding me, and standing inside the Starlight Lounge on Deck 11 of the Ocean Paradise, surrounded by music, laughter, and hundreds of passengers dancing like nothing bad could ever happen here, I finally started to believe her. My name is Jessica Thompson. I'm 32, from Denver, Colorado. For 5 long years, I had been trapped in a marriage that sucked the life out of me, stripping away my spark and leaving me feeling like a ghost of myself. My ex was controlling, always criticizing, always reminding me that I was dull and unattractive. This cruise was meant to be my escape, a chance to breathe again, to find the person I used to be before I let someone else define me. The ship itself was enormous, with over 4,000 passengers, and its nightlife was far more alive than I had imagined. The Starlight Lounge was the beating heart of it, a full bar, flashing lights, a DJ spinning everything from modern hits to old throwbacks. Megan and I had started the evening over dinner, sipping wine and catching up after everything I'd been through. By 10 p.m., we were in the lounge, cocktails in hand, laughing, swaying to the music, feeling like the world was ours again. I wore a black dress bought just for this trip, something my ex would have mocked for being too revealing, but it made me feel bold and alive. For the first time in years, men were looking at me with interest instead of indifference. One man in particular stood out. Tall, late 30s, dark hair, confident smile. He introduced himself as James, said he was traveling alone for business, squeezing in vacation time after a conference in Miami. He was smooth, charming, but not pushy. He asked questions, listened closely, laughed easily at my stories about work as a graphic designer. The attention felt dangerous in how good it made me feel, like stepping too close to fire but not wanting to step away. When James offered to buy us another round, Megan leaned toward me, whispering, "You deserve this. He seems nice." By midnight, Megan was fading. She hugged me, said she was heading back to our cabin, and asked if I was staying. James was at the bar getting drinks. The music was still pounding, and I felt alive in a way I hadn't in years. I told her I'd stay just a little longer and text her later. That was the last moment I remembered clearly. After that, it was fragments. James handing me a glowing blue cocktail that burned stronger than the others, my body spinning faster than the music, his hand steadying me, pulling me closer, guiding me somewhere. My legs didn't want to move, but he made sure they did. When my eyes opened again, everything was wrong. I wasn't in my cabin. I wasn't even in a passenger area. I was lying on an old couch in a crew key room deep inside the ship. Harsh fluorescent lights stabbed at my eyes. My mouth was dry, my head heavy, my body aching in ways that twisted my stomach. My black dress was still on me, but wrinkled and twisted. My underwear was gone. Around me were lockers, a coffee machine, a small table, and the overwhelming chemical smell of industrial cleaner mixed with something foul. My phone said it was after 3 in the afternoon. I had lost nearly 15 hours. The door opened suddenly, and a crewman stepped inside. He froze when he saw me, eyes wide, like he knew exactly what I was doing there, but wished he hadn't walked in. "Miss, you should not be here," he said with an accent I couldn't place. "This is crew only." My voice cracked when I tried to speak. "I don't know how I got here. Can you help me?" He looked uneasy, then muttered, "You were brought here very drunk last night. Someone said you needed a safe place to sleep." "Brought here? By who?" He didn't answer. He just led me through a labyrinth of tight corridors with pipes rattling overhead and machinery humming all around us. Other crew stared as we passed, their expressions unreadable, some curious, some darker. The man said this happens sometimes. Passengers drink too much and get lost. But I knew. I hadn't just been drunk. Something had been slipped into my drink. When I reached my cabin, Megan nearly crushed me in a hug, shaking with relief and fury. She had spent the night searching, begging security to help, even checking the medical bay. "Where were you?" she cried. My voice broke as I told her everything I could remember. The blue drink, James, then waking in that hidden crew area with missing time and missing clothes, her face drained of color. "Jess, you were drugged. You were assaulted. This isn't your fault. We're reporting it now." At the security office on Deck 3, Officer Martinez, a stern but sympathetic woman, took my statement seriously. She asked me to describe James, but all I had was a vague outline. Tall, dark hair, mid-30s, a face that could vanish. In a crowd of passengers, she promised to check security footage and have me examined by the doctor. Dr. Foster, a kind, older man, confirmed what I already suspected. There were signs of sexual activity I couldn't remember, and traces of a drug in my blood. He warned it would fade quickly, making evidence hard to prove. Officer Martinez came back later with news that hit harder than a wave. The security cameras covering the lounge had gone down during the exact hours I was there with James. "It happens with interference," she said, but her face betrayed doubt. No footage, no proof, no trace. Other passengers didn't recall seeing me with him either, which felt impossible. He had been so visible, so social, but it was like he had been erased. Over the next days, whispers spread. Other women mentioned blackouts, lost hours, waking in crew areas with no memory. "It happens more often than you'd think," Megan whispered, eyes dark. "But most never report it." On our final night, Megan found a note slipped under our door. My blood turned to ice as I read the words typed on cruise ship stationery. "Thank you for a memorable evening, Jessica. Your friend Megan is next." My knees weakened. He was still here, watching, waiting. We barricaded ourselves in the room that night, taking turns staying awake, knowing it wouldn't matter. Someone like him could move wherever he wanted, whenever he wanted. When the ship finally docked, I filed a report with local police, but their jurisdiction ended at the water's edge. The cruise line promised an investigation, but I never heard another word. 6 months later, I found a survivor forum online. Dozens of women shared stories just like mine. Different ships, different faces, same patterns. Men who appeared and disappeared without a trace. Cameras that always seemed to malfunction at the right time. Evidence lost to the waves. I never Ned who James really was, or if that was even his name. But I learned something worse. Cruise ships are floating cities where predators thrive, hidden behind international waters and corporate silence. When Megan told me I deserved to have fun, she was right. But fun shouldn't mean survival. And out there in the middle of the ocean, surrounded by strangers, survival is sometimes the only thing you have left. I have always been the kind of person who needs to understand how things work. As a mechanical engineer from Seattle, I live to take apart systems, study structures, see the hidden parts others overlook. So, when I boarded the Celestial Voyager for a week-long Mediterranean cruise, I wasn't only excited about the ports we'd visit, I was fascinated by the ship itself. A giant floating city, 15 decks tall, carrying almost 4,000 passengers across open waters. I wandered the public areas, studying stabilizers, water treatment systems, fascinated by how it all held together. But during the safety briefing, something strange caught my attention. The crew member described decks 1 through 12, then jumped straight to deck 14. When I asked about deck 13, she smiled politely and said it was for service use only, restricted to crew. The answer didn't satisfy me. Ships usually don't care about superstitions like skipping the 13th floor. My curiosity was sparked. For 3 uneventful days, I explored, toured Barcelona and Nice, then wandered the quiet ship late at night while most passengers slept or drank. The emptiness of the halls comforted me, the low hum of machines beneath everything. On the 4th night, as we sailed toward Rome, I slipped into a service stairwell at the stern. Plain metal steps, no decoration, the hidden skeleton of the ship. I climbed toward where deck 13 should be, expecting a locked door with warning signs. Instead, I found a corridor. Dim, narrow, lit only by faint emergency lights. Not a maintenance area. Something that looked like a regular passenger hallway, carpeted and clean, stretching both ways. But there were no cabin doors, only heavy metal panels lined the walls like sealed access points. The air was colder, thicker, carrying a strange damp smell of rusted machinery and something faintly sweet, almost rotting. The ship's movement felt different here too, like the floor tilted more sharply with each roll of the waves. I walked slowly, my footsteps muffled on the thick carpet, heart pounding at the wrongness of the place. Halfway down the corridor, I noticed one of the metal panels wasn't sealed properly. The latch hung loose, leaving it cracked open like something wanted me to look. Against my better judgment, I pulled it open wider. What I saw made me freeze. Inside wasn't a storage area, nor pipes or wires. It was a cabin, a full passenger cabin, just like the ones on other decks. Bed, dresser, bathroom door. But everything inside was covered in dust, thick enough to show no one had stayed there in years. A place meant to be hidden. A place passengers weren't supposed to know existed, and I couldn't help but wonder who had used it last, and why it was sealed away. The cabin had a bed, desk, and tiny bathroom just like any other passenger room on the ship, but something about it felt completely off. The furniture looked older, as if it belonged to another era, nothing like the modern design of the Celestial Voyager. The carpet was worn and patterned differently, and the light fixtures seemed outdated, like they had been taken from a ship built decades ago. Stepping inside felt like stepping back in time, as though I had walked into a place sealed away for years. Scattered across the room were signs of someone's life, an open suitcase on the bed with clothes spilling out, a book on the desk beside a pair of glasses, and a coffee cup on the nightstand with a dried ring at the bottom. It looked as if the person staying here had simply vanished halfway through unpacking. I picked up the book and saw it had been published in 1987. The clothes in the suitcase were clearly from the same period, faded and old-fashioned. But the most unsettling detail sat on the desk. a cruise schedule for a ship called the Oceanic Dream, with dates from September 1987. My stomach turned cold. This wasn't just a random abandoned room. It looked as if this cabin had been preserved exactly as it was left decades ago. I was about to leave when I heard footsteps outside in the corridor, slow, heavy steps that paused right outside the cabin door. I froze, my heart pounding. The sound lingered, then finally moved on, fading into the shadows of the hallway. Driven by both fear and curiosity, I checked other panels along the corridor. Most were sealed shut or only led to small storage spaces, but one opened to reveal another hidden cabin. This one was older still. The suitcase held clothes from the 1970s, and on the table lay a cruise schedule for a ship called the Mediterranean Star, dated 1976. Every hidden cabin told the same story. Personal belongings left behind as if their owners had stepped out for only a moment. Old photographs, half-read books, clothes folded mid-unpack, all frozen in time. Some cabins were from the 1960s, others from the 1980s and early 1990s, but none more recent. Each one whispered of lives interrupted, passengers who never returned. In the 8th cabin, I found something that made my blood run cold. On the desk lay a photo album, open to snapshots of passengers smiling on deck, dancing in lounges, and dining in elegant halls. The hairstyles and clothes placed them in the early 1990s. But the more I looked, the stranger the photos seemed. Every passenger in the pictures wore the same eerie expression, their eyes glassy and vacant, as though they weren't truly present. It wasn't joy, it was emptiness, like they were staring through the lens into something beyond. The final photo showed a group of them standing on what looked like this very corridor in front of the same metal panels. And as if their faces were blank, their eyes dead, as if they belonged to something else now. Then I heard them again. Footsteps. But this time, they weren't alone. Whispers rose from every direction, low voices speaking urgently in tones I couldn't understand. The sound came from the cabins, from behind the walls, from the very air. My name was in them, clear as day. David Park. Come join us, David. My heart nearly stopped. No one on the ship knew I was exploring here. No one should have known my name. The whispers pressed closer, chasing me down the corridor. Metal panels groaned open behind me. I didn't dare look back. I just ran. I threw myself into the stairwell, the whispers hissing after me, growing louder with every step. I slammed the door shut and fled until I was back in the safety of my own cabin. The next morning, I searched for the ships listed on those old schedules, the Oceanic Dream, the Mediterranean Star, and others. What I uncovered chilled me to the bone. Each ship had the same history: Mediterranean routes, unexplained disappearances of passengers who left all their belongings behind, ships quietly retired or scrapped soon after. Official reports blamed economic struggles or mechanical failures, but buried in maritime records were references to missing people that cruise lines could never explain. The Celestial Voyager itself was not entirely new, despite the company's claims. Construction files revealed it had been built partly from salvaged sections of those very ships, including entire decks. Deck 13 wasn't even supposed to exist. On the blueprints, the space was marked for ballast. Instead, it seemed an entire deck had been carried over from one of those doomed ships, preserved cabins and all. On our final night, I gave in to the pull of curiosity. I had to see it again. The corridor was different now. Where metal panels had been, there were cabine doors with numbers, carpet that matched the rest of the ship, and bright lights. It looked like any normal deck, but when I tried the doors, they were locked. From inside, I heard movement. The scrape of drawers, footsteps, the soft thump of luggage. Someone was living in these rooms. I knocked. The sounds went silent. "Hello?" I called. For a moment, nothing. Then a voice answered, muffled but clear. "We are fine, David. We've been waiting for you to join us." The way they said my name froze me in place. I backed away, heart hammering, as doors began opening all along the corridor. Footsteps poured out behind me. I didn't wait to see their faces. I ran until I locked myself in my cabin, sitting up all night with the deadbolt secure. The next morning in Barcelona, I was one of the first off the ship. I've never taken another cruise since. I research every place I stay, making sure it wasn't rebuilt from the bones of something old. Because I learned the truth on Deck 13. When ships and buildings are recycled, sometimes it isn't just steel and wood that get carried over. Sometimes the history stays, sometimes the people stay too, and sometimes they're waiting for someone new to join them forever. The Mediterranean breeze felt perfect against my skin as I leaned on the balcony of cabin 8247, watching the golden sun sink into the Italian coast. After half a year of bitter court battles and endless nights of tears, this cruise was supposed to be my rebirth. My name is Rebecca Martinez, 35 years old from San Antonio, Texas, and for the first time in years, I felt peace. The Adriatic Princess was everything the ads promised: grand, luxurious, and alive with possibilities. I'd splurged on a balcony cabin, telling myself I deserved to wake up to the endless sea and sleep to the rhythm of waves. What I hadn't expected was meeting Andrew. I noticed him the second day. While I was reading by the pool, he sat at the bar, barely touching his drink, his eyes scanning the crowd like a photographer studying faces. When our eyes met, he smiled, raised his glass, and something about his calm confidence hooked me instantly. That night in the dining room, he approached me. "Eating alone?" he asked lightly. "That's a crime on vacation. Mind if I join?" His charm was effortless, his humor natural. He told me he was from Portland, in real estate, celebrating a major deal. For someone who had been invisible to her ex for so long, I found myself glowing under his attention. The days melted together in a rhythm. Breakfast, excursions at port, dinner, drinks, laughter. Andrew never pressured, never crossed boundaries, which only made me trust him more. He listened to me talk about my divorce, my fears for the future, and offered gentle advice, like someone who understood loss himself. By the fifth night, I was completely drawn in. After we danced in the ballroom, my heart raced like it hadn't in years. When he suggested we take a bottle of wine back to my balcony, I didn't hesitate. My balcony was wide and private, overlooking the dark sea, the stars sharp above us. Andrew returned with a bottle of expensive Chianti and 2 glasses. We sat together, listening to the water churn beneath the moon. "This is perfect," I sighed. He smiled warmly. "No, Rebecca, you're perfect. He was a fool to let you go." His words sank into me like a balm, and I felt my chest ache with something between gratitude and longing. He kept my glass full, his voice smooth as he shared stories of his travels. Even the simplest tales sounded thrilling in his voice. But as the night stretched on, something changed. The wine tasted rich, but my body reacted differently than it should have. I had only drunk a few glasses, yet my head was swimming, the stars blurring above me. My limbs grew heavy, my mind hazy, and I realized too late that I was far more intoxicated than I should have been. My speech started to blur, and my movements felt strangely heavy in a way that reminded me of being drunk, but much worse. "I think I had too much wine," I said, forcing a weak laugh. "You're fine," Andrew replied, though his voice sounded different now, colder. "Just relax. Enjoy the night." He pulled his chair closer, and for the first time I noticed the sharp, calculating look in his eyes. When he placed his hand on my arm, his grip was too tight, almost controlling. "Maybe we should head inside," I suggested, my unease growing. "Why would we do that?" he said smoothly, standing and stepping behind my chair. "The night is perfect. We should enjoy the view." I tried to stand, but my legs felt weak, far more than they should after just a couple glasses of wine. That was when dread filled me. He must have slipped something into my drink. "I need to go inside," I insisted, clinging to the chair to stop myself from collapsing. Andrew's tone dropped the charm completely. "No, you don't. We're staying here and finishing our talk." He stepped in front of me, blocking the sliding door back into the cabin. His face was no longer kind. It was cold, almost animalistic. "What did you put in my wine?" I forced out, trying to sound steady. "Just something to help you loosen up," he said casually, as though this were normal. "You've been so tense, always worrying about people's opinions. This will help you finally relax." My stomach dropped as I realized this had been his plan all along. The chance meeting, the dinners, the attention. It wasn't romance. It was a setup. He had been leading me to this exact moment, alone, on a balcony over endless black water. "Someone will notice if I'm gone," I lied, though I knew it wasn't true. I had kept mostly to myself on this trip. I had even told people I planned to stay in my cabin tonight. "Will they?" he asked, stepping closer. "You're too raveling alone. You've made no real connections. Tomorrow is a sea day. No ports, no stops. By the time anyone realizes you're missing, the ship will be hundreds of miles away." My eyes flicked to the railing. It wasn't built for safety, just appearance. 4 feet high, and beyond it, the dark sea churned violently. My horror deepened. He didn't plan to assault me. He planned to erase me. "You've done this before," I whispered. He smiled, the same charming smile that had drawn me in at the start. "Solo female travelers are easy prey," he said softly. "Especially ones who are hurting. You all want to believe someone truly sees you." I thought about running, but he stood perfectly between me and escape. The drug was fogging my mind, slowing me down. He leaned closer, his voice almost casual. "Falling won't kill you right away. The water's freezing, the current is brutal. By the time they turn the ship around, you'll be gone. Happens more often than people think." That told me what I needed. He couldn't risk a struggle. He needed it to look like an accident. I forced myself to act defeated. "You're right," I said, lowering my eyes. "I've been so lonely. I guess I was an easy target." His grin widened, his guard lowering. "Don't see it that way," he said mockingly. "We had our fun. You can take those memories with you." He reached for my face in a mock tender gesture, but I saw my chance. My hand closed around the wine bottle on the table. I swung with everything I had. The bottle smashed against his temple, and the crack echoed in the night. He staggered, blood streaming. "You bitch!" he roared, lunging. I rolled off the chair and scrambled toward the sliding door, my legs heavy but still moving. His hand clamped around my ankle, but I kicked hard, tearing free and clawing for the handle. My panic fumbled with the lock until finally it gave. I stumbled into the cabin just as Andrew reached the doorway. I slammed the door and clicked the security lock. Heart pounding, I grabbed the phone. "Security, cabin 8247, I gasped when the voice answered. "There's a man on my balcony trying to hurt me. Please, hurry." "We're sending officers," the voice said quickly. "Stay inside. Don't open the door for anyone but security." Through the glass, I saw Andrew pacing, pressing a towel against his bleeding head. He didn't try to break in. He just stared, waiting. 5 minutes later, security arrived. 2 questioned me, while another slid the door open to arrest him. But the balcony was empty. "Where is he?" I whispered. "There's no way down except inside or over the railing." The officer's expression was grim. They searched my room, checked cameras. Nothing. Andrew was gone. I gave them my statement, and though the bloody bottle and towel backed my story, I could see doubt in their eyes. I was moved to another cabin under protection for the rest of the trip. But then came the most chilling discovery. There was no passenger named Andrew on board. The identity he'd used was fake, his documents expertly forged. And when investigators dug deeper, they uncovered a disturbing pattern. Over 3 years, 17 women had disappeared from Mediterranean cruises. All were alone. All had been widowed or divorced. Many had last been seen with a man. The cruise line settled my case quietly, offering counseling and silencing publicity, but I later learned how difficult prosecuting crimes at sea can be. Jurisdiction tangles, international waters, legal dead ends. As for Andrew, no body was ever found. Officials suggested he must have fallen or jumped to avoid capture, but I don't believe it. He was too careful, too practiced. I suspect he knew ways to vanish into the ship itself. Hidden crew passages, service areas no passenger would ever see. What I do know is this: I survived by a thin thread. If I hadn't questioned my wine, if I hadn't fought back, I'd be just another missing aim. This taught me something chilling. Monsters don't always look like monsters. Sometimes they smile, listen, and act like they care. But they are studying, waiting, searching for your weakness. And when the time comes, the only thing that keeps you alive is realizing that charm is just another kind of weapon. My name is Tyler Johnson, a 24-year-old marine engineer from Norfolk, Virginia. After finishing my degree in mechanical engineering, I worked 2 years in the shipyard before deciding to see the world. A cruise ship contract seemed perfect, a chance to travel and learn about massive sea systems. The Mediterranean Explorer was my first ship. It carried nearly 5,000 passengers and crew, and I was hired as a junior engine officer, deep below in the machinery that powered the floating city. The engine room was like its own hidden world: roaring diesel generators, endless pipes, air systems, water treatment, and the colossal engines that drove us through the ocean. It was hot, loud, and never stopped running. The engine room worked around the clock with engineers switching shifts to keep the ship alive. My first week on board, I was given the midnight shift, working from 12 until 8 in the morning. The older engineers told me this was normal for new crew members, a way to learn the systems when things were calmer and there were fewer distractions from passengers. I fell in love with the job right away. There was something thrilling about being responsible for the heartbeat of such a massive ship. Every lever, every valve, every system mattered, and all of it needed constant care. The night shift supervisor, Chief Engineer Martinez, had years of experience and was patient with me. He didn't just teach the mechanics, he taught me the pride and tradition of the work. "The engine room sees everything," he said in my second week. "Passengers believe the bridge roots against the ship, but down here we know the truth. Nothing happens up there without our permission." I didn't know then that what I was about to find would change everything. By my third week, I was doing routine checks on the water treatment system. It handled both fresh water for the passengers and the wastewater from the ship. It sat in one of the lowest parts of the engine room, hidden down a narrow, overheated passage that few liked to walk through. While checking the pressure on the waste tanks, I noticed one pipe trembling more than the others. In this line of work, vibrations were dangerous signs. I followed it to find the cause. The pipe led me into parts of the ship I had never entered, past forgotten storage and unused machinery. The deeper I went, the more the vibration grew, until I reached a small chamber not shown on any engineering maps I had studied. It was about the size of a closet, with concrete walls and a thick steel door cracked open just enough. From inside came the strange trembling and a low, steady hum that didn't belong to any of the ship's systems I knew. I pushed the door wider and stepped inside with my flashlight. What I saw froze me in place. 3 tanks sat in the chamber, hooked into the wastewater system. But they weren't handling waste. They held human body parts, arms, legs, torsos, floating in a clear chemical fluid. Tubes connected to the tanks slowly broke them down, pumping the liquid out to the sea. My breath caught. This wasn't medical waste or some official disposal method. It was a hidden slaughterhouse disguised inside the ship's guts. My hands shook as I backed away, pulling the door closed. Who could I even tell? Martinez had keys to every part of the engine room. Security reported directly to the captain. If they were part of this, what chance did I have? The only thought in my head was proof. I returned later with my phone, snapping photos of the tanks, the pipes, the control panels. Each image made me sicker, but it was the only evidence I could get. For days, I acted normal while searching through passenger logs, crew records, and news of disappearances. What I found made my stomach twist. In the 6 years the Mediterranean Explorer had been sailing, 17 passengers and 3 crew had gone missing. Every report claimed the same thing: accidents or suicides, bodies falling overboard in the night. But the times of their vanishings lined up with the strange activity in those hidden tanks. The vibrations, the power surges, all of it matched. I realized I had uncovered an ongoing chain of murders hidden under the excuse of the sea's endless silence. It was clear who they chose: passengers traveling alone, crew who asked too much, anyone who could vanish without the world noticing. I had to know if Martinez was part of it. One night while we worked, I tried a test. "Some of the tanks in Section 7 are running cycles that don't fit the passenger load," I said like it was nothing. "Should I look into it?" The blood drained from his face. Quickly, he pulled me away from that area. "That section's off limits to juniors," he snapped. "Special systems there need senior clearance." "What kind of systems?" I pressed. "Medical waste disposal," he muttered, avoiding my eyes. "Sometimes passengers die on board. We have to handle the remains. It's not your concern." I knew he was lying. Real medical waste was handled by the doctors, not buried in secret chambers. That night, I copied everything I had: photos, logs, research, and uploaded it to a secure account. I sent backups to my email on shore. If I vanished, my discovery wouldn't vanish with me. My plan was simple: hold out until the next port and go straight to the police. But Martinez must have noticed my change in behavior. The next night, I was called to fix a breakdown in one of the most isolated corners of the engine room. When I got there, 3 men waited. Martinez was there, along with 2 CQ, righty officers. "Tyler, we need to have a conversation," Martinez said, in a way that wasn't a suggestion. They took me to a hidden office, far from wandering eyes and muffled by the roar of the engines. Their words confirmed my worst fears. They knew I had seen the tanks, and I had become a risk. One of the guards leaned close. "You've seen what wasn't meant for you. Now we decide what to do about you." Then they told me everything. The operation wasn't just about covering up crew deaths or the odd passenger, it was a service. Wealthy passengers paid to make their enemies disappear, politicians, rivals, unwanted relatives. No one questions disappearances at sea. Martinez's voice was calm as he said it. Accidents happen. People drink too much, fall overboard. Suicides are common. The ocean hides everything. Then they gave me my choice. I could join them, silence bought with money and blood, or I could be one more body dissolved in their hidden tanks. Think about it carefully. The security officer leaned close and said, "You're young. You've got debts, student loans. You want to travel, see the world. We can give you all that, or..." His smile sharpened. "We can make you disappear tonight and claim you had an accident in the engine room." My throat tightened, but I forced myself to nod. I told them I needed time to think, and they agreed, though I knew they would watch me like hawks. My hours were numbered. That night, I slipped a message to a friend back home. I told him everything I had found, the tanks, the missing people, the truth, and attached all my evidence. I gave him one clear order. If he didn't hear from me in 48 hours, he was to take it all to the FBI. Then I went back into the engine room one last time and sabotaged the system. A chemical additive, something simple, almost invisible, would make the tanks overflow, spilling evidence where no one could hide it. I left the sea, Hamber trembling, hoping the risk would work. The next morning, as the ship neared Barcelona, the sabotage hit. The disposal system roared, overflows spilling through the drains and pipes, spreading across decks. The stench was unbearable, a sick mix of chemicals and rot. Sirens blared, and the captain called for emergency procedures. Spanish maritime authorities swarmed aboard as soon as we docked. In the chaos, I slipped into the crowd and went straight to the police. My evidence was in my pocket, my survival hanging on every second. What followed tore the world open. Investigators traced everything, not just our ship, but others in the fleet. The hidden operation was massive, a network of death running silently beneath luxury vacations. Martinez and senior officers were dragged off in handcuffs. Even some passengers, those who had come aboard not for pleasure but for business, were caught. My photos, my files, my logs, they became the nails in the coffin. For years, people had vanished into those tanks. Families told their loved ones had fallen overboard, finally knew the truth. The company collapsed. Lawsuits, bankruptcies, penalties that destroyed them. Other cruise lines scrambled to patch their image, installing cameras, audits, security reviews. But I knew the deeper truth. None of it could erase the shadow. Ships move in international waters, in lawless corridors. Thousands of people trapped together in floating cities, with crew who can vanish into passages and systems no passenger will ever see. Martinez had told me once, "The engine room sees everything." He was right, but some things it sees should never exist. I had always loved storms. Back home in Oklahoma, I was the kid who stood on the porch during tornado warnings, heart racing at the sky's wild power. So when I booked my first cruise, I hoped we'd meet rough seas. I wanted to feel the ocean's rage. From the shelter of a steel giant. My name is Amanda Walsh, 30, a meteorologist from Tulsa. After 6 years at the National Weather Service, this solo October trip on the Atlantic Majesty was my gift to myself for surviving another brutal tornado season. The Majesty wasn't one of the floating metropolises. It held only 2,000 passengers, but it had a reputation for stability, a ship built to weather storms. For 4 days it was too calm. Clear skies, lazy swells, sunshine that bored me to death. Retirees filled the decks, reading, drinking, dozing. I attended lectures, read in the library, counted hours. By day 5, I thought the trip would drift by without a whisper of danger. Then the announcement came. The captain's voice carried a weight of tension. Hurricane Delilah, now a tropical storm, lay in our path. Winds at 70 miles per hour, swells at 20 feet. We would alter course north, but passengers should expect a long night of rough seas. My blood surged with excitement. Finally, the storm I'd been waiting for. By dinner, the ship's roll was heavier, glasses sliding, footsteps staggering. Most passengers vanished to their cabins, but I made my way to the observation lounge on deck 12, eager to see the ocean rear up. The storm built hour by hour. By 10 o'clock, we were climbing watery mountains and crashing down their backs, the whole ship shuddering like a toy. Lightning tore the sky, revealing waves like walls, the wind howling louder than the engines. My chest thrilled with every crash until the lights died. Darkness swallowed us. The hum of engines was gone. The backup lights flickered red, casting a hellish glow on the dozen faces around me. The silence of dead machinery was worse than the storm. Without power, we weren't steering into the waves anymore. We were wallowing, rolling broadside. The motion was sickening, violent, throwing passengers against seats. Some retched instantly. A voice crackled through the intercom, warped by static. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are experiencing temporary technical difficulties due to the severe weather. Please remain in your locations. Do not attempt to move through the corridors." It was supposed to calm us, but it didn't. It sounded like a warning. Stay put or be swallowed. Hours dragged by. The storm worsened. The lounge grew colder, darker, hungrier. The emergency batteries drained until the light was barely a smear of red. Old passengers shook with cold, their lips blue. But the storm outside wasn't the only danger growing. Inside, in the dim human shadows, shifted into something darker. His name was Robert. That was what he told us, at least. Mid-40s, traveling alone, a friendly smile during calmer days. But the storm twisted him into something else. When a frail woman begged for water, he clutched his bottle and lied. "I don't have any." When a young couple tried to comfort each other, he sneered, his voice dripping filth. As the hours stretched and the storm screamed outside, Robert prowled. He moved closer to a woman in her 50s who clutched her elderly mother's hand. Each time she shifted away, he followed, murmuring about body heat, about keeping each other warm. His eyes gleamed in the dim red light, not with kindness, but hunger. I watched him corner her, his hand hovering too close. My gut nodded. He was waiting for the chaos to cover his intent. "Back off," I said, my voice sharper than I felt. "Give her space." His head turned slowly, his smile curdling into something ugly. "Mind your own business," he growled. And in that moment, the storm outside felt less terrifying than the predator trapped in the room with us. We were all adults in that lounge, and survival should have been the priority. But the other men there were either too old or too afraid to stand up to Robert. The young man with his girlfriend looked ready, but the fear in his eyes told me he had no all experience facing someone like this. If anyone was going to stop Robert from going further, it had to be me. "You're not trying to help anyone survive," I said, forcing myself upright though the ship pitched beneath my feet. "You're using this disaster to prey on people." Robert's laugh was sharp and unsettling in the dim red glow. "Prey? No, sweetheart. I'm being friendly. Maybe you're just jealous I'm not paying attention to you." He leaned toward the terrified woman again, and this time her hand clutched my arm like a lifeline. "Please," she whispered, "don't let him touch me." I moved in front of her, blocking his path, my mind already racing. Storms like this could last half a day, maybe longer, and if Robert was this bold so early in the night, what would he do when the darkness deepened? I steadied my voice, using the same tone I had used during tornado warnings back home. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to sit in that corner, away from everyone, and you'll stay there until crew arrives." He smirked and stepped closer. "Or what? What are you gonna do?" What he didn't know was that growing up chasing storms with my father had prepared me for more than weather. Dad had made me learn self-defense, teaching me how disasters brought out desperate people, sometimes dangerous ones. Robert reached past me, his hand aiming for the woman. That was his mistake. I caught his wrist and used the ship's violent sway to my advantage, flipping his weight forward. He stumbled hard, slamming into a row of chairs with a grunt. "Stay down," I warned, my pulse hammering. "Try it again and I'll make sure you don't get back up until daylight." He glared, pushing to rise, but the spell was broken. The young man finally stepped forward, standing beside me. Even some of the older passengers raised their voices, telling Robert enough was enough. Surrounded, his confidence faltered. He retreated to the farthest corner, muttering curses and nonsense about ungrateful fools. I didn't take my eyes off him, not for a second. The storm raged for 6 more hours. The backup lights gave out completely, leaving us blind except for lightning flashes that turned the lounge into a nightmare theater of shadows. The wind screamed, the sea battered us, and in that blackness, I kept watch. I could hear Robert shifting sometimes, his low voice whispering to himself, but he never dared move closer again. When dawn broke, the lights flickered back. The Majesty had been torn apart by the storm, flooded engines, dead navigation, corridors half destroyed. We floated helpless, waiting for rescue, land in sight but unreachable. I wasted no time reporting Robert. The officers listened, but his lies came fast. He said he had only been trying to keep everyone warm, that I had misunderstood. With no crew witness, only shaken passengers, they made no charges. They moved him away, but whispers from other survivors soon reached me. Robert had tried the same thing in other dark corners of the ship, touching women, using the storm as cover. 36 hours later, rescue finally came. When we reached safety, I gave my full statement, every detail, every warning. Yet I knew this wasn't a rare monster. Emergencies strip away rules, and some people, like Robert, see nothing but opportunity in the chaos, darkness, isolation, fear, all the perfect shield for predators to act unseen. The Majesty's breakdown was written off as storm damage in the official reports. No mention of what had happened in that lounge, no mention of the women Robert targeted. Settlements were made in secret, victims silenced by contracts and compensation. It wasn't the first time, and it won't be the last. Crisis on cruise ships creates shadows where predators hide, their actions erased by the bigger focus on survival. The storm I had begged for taught me the most unsettling truth. The waves outside weren't the greatest threat. It was the people beside you when the lights died. The ocean hides many dangers, but none more terrifying than the ones who reveal themselves when no one is watching. Out there, surrounded by strangers in the middle of nowhere, you never know who's waiting for the lights to go out. My name is Carlos Rivera, and I am a 41-year-old construction foreman from Phoenix, Arizona. I had never stepped on a cruise ship before, but my wife Maria insisted we needed this after 20 years of marriage and raising 3 kids. The Caribbean sunset was supposed to be our second honeymoon, a chance to forget work, stress, and just breathe again. I wasn't the type to get sick. 25 years in construction had built me tough, so when I woke on our 3rd morning clutching my stomach, nausea twisting like a knife, I thought it was food poisoning. The buffet had been endless, and I had eaten like a man starved. But as the hours passed, the pain sharpened, shifting into my right side, my fever rising. Maria's eyes darkened with recognition. "Carlos, I think it's appendicitis," she whispered, her hand cold on my forehead. "We need to get you to the medical center, now." I wanted to argue. I didn't want to ruin our trip, but when I tried to stand and nearly fell from the pain, I gave in. She guided me down to deck 2, where the medical center sat like a hospital wing buried in the ship's belly. The waiting area was spotless, modern, and strangely calm. A receptionist with a British accent soothed us, promising that Dr. Harrison was among the best at sea. He arrived moments later, a man in his late 50s with graying hair and eyes that radiated experience. His examination was thorough, his questions sharp. "Acute appendicitis," he concluded. "We'll need to operate immediately. The good news, you're in the right place. We're fully equipped. I've done this hundreds of times." Maria's fear spilled out. "But on the ship? Isn't it dangerous?" Dr. Harrison shook his head, voice steady. "Our surgical suite meets every international standard. I've been at this for 15 years. The alternative would be a helicopter evacuation, which, in this weather, would be more dangerous than the surgery itself." His reassurance worked. Against my dread, I signed the forms. The operating room gleamed. The nurses moved like a practice team. They placed the mask over me, and I drifted into nothingness. Hours later, I woke, hazy, my side stitched but intact. Dr. Harrison leaned over, smiling. "All went perfectly. A simple laparoscopic removal. You'll be back to normal in days. We'll keep you here overnight just to be safe." Relief flooded me, but relief didn't last. That night, lying in the dim recovery ward, details began to feel wrong. Nurses changed too often, some looking distracted, some whispering about things that had nothing to do with medicine. Around midnight, Harrison returned, but the man who had reassured us earlier was gone. He looked unsettled, his eyes flicking too quickly. He asked questions that made my blood run cold, not about my pain, but about my insurance, about my family's finances. "You're recovering well," he said, his fingers pressing near the bandage. "But during surgery I saw abnormalities, things we didn't expect. We should discuss additional treatment." I froze. "What kind of abnormalities?" He didn't answer clearly. He circled around vague threats of hidden conditions, warning that delaying could be dangerous. More procedures, more tests, things that would keep me in that ward longer, under their control. His tone was too rehearsed, too insistent, like a contractor inventing work for a bigger payout. "Let me talk to my wife," I demanded. His eyes hardened. Visiting hours are over. Maria needs her rest. We'll tell her in the morning. And that was when the dread truly began. For now, you should focus on your recovery. After he left, I lay awake replaying every word of that conversation. None of it felt right. Appendicitis surgery was supposed to be simple, not followed by vague warnings of hidden problems. The unease gnawed at me until I couldn't stay still. Ignoring the order to rest, I eased out of bed, my side sore but manageable, and began walking the halls of the medical center. It was bigger than I had first realized. Exam rooms branching off, a pharmacy tucked in the corner, even another small surgical suite separate from the one I'd been in. The silence was heavy, broken only by a hum of machines and faint voices. That was when I caught a sound from a partially open door. I leaned closer and froze. Trust your instincts if something feels off. Even in the middle of the ocean, you have the right to say no to treatment or look for another option. Sometimes the cure can be far more dangerous than the illness, especially when those offering it care less about your health and more about your money. My name is Hannah Brooks, a 28-year-old freelance photographer from Portland, Oregon. 6 months after a breakup that left me hollow, I booked my first solo vacation. I wanted to rebuild myself, to prove I could stand on my own again. A 10-day Mediterranean cruise felt perfect, safe, structured, but still full of adventure. The ship, Ocean Majesty, looked like a dream. Huge, polished, alive with energy. I could lose myself in crowds or find quiet corners for peace. As a photographer, I carried my camera everywhere. I loved capturing the strange little world that formed at sea. Families laughing, old couples swaying to music, kids running wild across the pool deck. It was like a city floating above endless water, both alive and eerily cut off. Through my lens, I saw beauty everywhere, and yet, it was also through my lens that I first realized something else. I was being watched. On my third day, while shooting the sunset from the upper deck, I noticed a crew member. White steward's uniform, dark hair, late 30s maybe. At first, I thought nothing of it. Ships have strict routines, and staff are always moving. But he appears, red again, and again. Every time I lifted my camera, he seemed to drift nearby. The more I tested it, the stranger it became. If I went to the pool in the morning, he was wiping tables. If I wandered into the art gallery, he was there, adjusting frames. If I skipped my normal walk and went to the library instead, he showed up not long after. Always close, always working, but always there. His name tag read, Marco. He never looked menacing outright, only smiling politely when our eyes met, but there was a weight in his stare, like he wasn't just doing his job. By day 6, my nerves snapped. I found him cleaning near the stern as I photographed the wake. I lowered my camera and forced my voice to stay light. "Excuse me, I'm Hannah Brooks, cabin 7254. I've noticed you're often in the same place as I am. Is there something you need from me?" For a split second, his face twisted, panic sharp and raw, before he smoothed it over with a practiced smile. "I'm sorry, miss. I don't understand. I work many areas of the ship. Perhaps we just cross paths often." I didn't believe him. "Maybe. Well, if you ever need photographs for ship activities, I'm happy to help." "Thank you, miss. I will remember that," he said. But instead of fading away, his shadow grew closer. That night, I saw him outside the dining hall, not working, just standing, watching. Later, in the theater, he lingered in the back, no task at hand. I went to guest services, hands trembling. The woman behind the desk was kind, but her words were rehearsed. "Crew move everywhere," she said. Without proof of wrongdoing, they couldn't accuse anyone. They could speak to him, yes, but that was all. I left with no comfort. That night, I locked my cabin door and slept with my camera bag beside me. In the morning, my gut dropped. Someone had entered while I slept. Nothing was stolen, but everything was changed. My clothes were My camera bag shifted. The papers on the nightstand stacked differently. It was deliberate. Security came. The officer was thorough but skeptical. "Are you sure you didn't move these things yourself? In unfamiliar places, it's easy to forget." "I'm a photographer," I told him. "Details are what I live for. Someone was here." He promised to check the cameras. Hours later, he returned with worse news. The footage from my corridor had glitched out during the exact hours I slept. A system malfunction. As for Marco, he claimed to be in the engine room with crew members backing his story. Too convenient. Too clean. That night, I tried something different. In the elevator, I said loudly that I was heading to the comedy show in the main theater. Instead, I went straight to the library and tucked myself in a dark reading corner with a view of the entrance. My heart beat like thunder as I waited. 15 minutes later, footsteps echoed in the corridor. Marco appeared, eyes sweeping the library like a hunter tracking prey. He wasn't there to clean, wasn't adjusting displays, wasn't doing anything except searching for me. When he didn't see me, Marco began moving through the library in a slow, careful way, checking row after row. His movements weren't random or routine. He wasn't dusting shelves or fixing lights. He was searching for me. I held my breath until he finally left, then slipped out quietly and followed him at a distance. Instead of going back to crew-only areas, Marco wandered through places I usually visited. The pool deck, the art gallery, the lounge at the front of the ship. It was clear he was trying to track me, using my own habits to guess where I'd be. On the 9th night, the last before we reached port, things turned far darker. I had decided to stay inside my cabin to avoid him, exhausted from the endless tension. Around 11 p.m., the sound of my door lock made me freeze. It was faint at first. Click, pause, click, as if someone was testing different keycards. I pressed my eye. E to the peephole. Marco stood there, but he wasn't in his white steward's uniform anymore. He wore dark coveralls like maintenance crew, and in his hand was a stack of keycards. He was trying each one, methodically, on my door. I grabbed the phone and called ship security, but the response was not what I expected. Instead of guards I recognized, Marco's supervisor showed up. He spoke quietly with Marco in the hallway before both of them left. My relief lasted only minutes. 20 minutes later, there was a knock on my door. Through the peephole, I saw two men dressed in ship security uniforms, faces I had never seen before. "Ms. Brooks," one of them said, "we need to discuss your complaints about a crew member. Please open the door." Something was wrong. Real officers would have called first or worked through guest services. These men arrived too quickly after Marco and his supervisor had walked away. "Can you show me ID?" I asked. "We are ship security, ma'am," one repeated firmly. "Just open the door so we can ask a few questions." Instead of obeying, I opened my laptop and searched the ship's internal directory. I dialed the number listed for security directly. The officer who answered sounded puzzled when I explained what was happening. "We haven't sent anyone to your cabin tonight. Do not open that door. Call us if they're still there." My stomach dropped. That meant the men outside were imposters. Real security knew nothing about them. I was locked inside my cabin, trapped while people dressed as officers tried to get in. That was when it hit me. Marco wasn't alone. He was part of something bigger, something organized. They had uniforms, key cards, and access that no single crewman should have. I pushed furniture against the door, my heart racing, and grabbed the emergency satellite device I always carried for solo trips. With shaking hands, I dialed the U.S. Coast Guard. I explained everything, how I was being stalked, how fake officers were outside trying to enter, how I feared for my life. While I waited, I picked up my camera and began filming through the peephole in the small window. More men appeared. Marco returned, joined by others in uniforms. They spoke in low voices, glancing toward my door like wolves waiting to strike. Hours crawled by. Around 2 a.m., real security finally arrived. The silence outside shattered with shouting, orders, and the sound of people being restrained. I couldn't see it all, but I knew something was happening. An hour later, I dared to open my door. The ship's head of security and the captain stood there, grave-faced. They told me the truth. They had uncovered a criminal ring involving several crew members. Marco wasn't just following me. He and others had been targeting solo women on board. They had access to passenger lists, cabin numbers, even security systems. They picked out women who seemed vulnerable, followed them, watched them, and planned attacks. My instincts had been right all along. The investigation revealed this wasn't new. It had been happening for months on multiple cruises. Women traveling alone had reported strange things before. Doors tested at night, belongings moved, crew members always nearby. But their complaints had been brushed aside. This time, arrests were made. Marco, 5 crew members, and a supervisor were detained when we reached port. Fake security gear, key cards, and forged passes were all part of their plan to get into cabins without raising suspicion. I later learned I wasn't their first target, just the first to resist and gather proof. Other women had been ignored, told they were paranoid. Now the cruise line faced lawsuits and was forced to tighten background checks and controls. But I also learned something far worse. The sea itself makes you vulnerable. On a ship, you are cut off with nowhere to run. Crew members have more power than passengers realize. Knowledge of your habits, control over locks and cameras, the authority of a uniform. When you are at sea, far from home, help moves slowly. The people you think you can trust may be the ones plotting against you. That night taught me more than fear. It taught me survival. Traveling alone, especially as a woman, means listening to your instincts, recording everything, and calling outside help if those on board fail you. Because sometimes the real threat on a cruise ship isn't the endless ocean outside, but the crew walking the halls. The very ones you trust with your safety may be the ones you need safety from. Dr. Harrison was inside with 2 men I had never seen. They weren't staff, no uniforms, no badges. The Rivera procedure went well, Harrison said. We should be able to stretch his case out for at least another week with the extra treatments. My stomach twisted, and not from the stitches. One of the men asked about insurance verification. Harrison's voice was calm, greedy. His coverage is excellent. Family has strong assets back home. This could be a very profitable case if we handle it correctly. The air turned ice cold around me. They weren't talking about saving lives. They were planning how to bleed me dry. I crept back to my bed, sliding under the covers before a nurse came in to check me, feigning sleep while my mind spun with one thought. I had to get out. Morning came. Maria arrived, relief lighting her face, until Harrison stepped in with his grave performance. Your husband's condition is worse than we thought, he told her smoothly. We'll need to do more procedures, extend his stay. Maria, sharp from her own medical background, pressed him for details. What complications? Where were the records? He dodged every question with soft lies. The important thing is, we've caught this early, but treatments will be costly. We'll need to review your insurance and, of course, any additional resources your family can provide. When Maria demanded to see my tests, Harrison's mask cracked. He grew evasive, muttering about processing delays and international waters. The phrase chilled me. Out here, the laws that protected patients back home didn't apply the same way. That afternoon, left alone, I slipped into an empty exam room. A computer terminal hummed on the desk. My fingers trembled as I searched, and what I found made my skin crawl. The medical center wasn't accredited by anyone. Harrison's proud credentials were fake. The surgical gear was outdated, patched together, and the records, the records, showed years of passengers lured into endless treatments. Colds turned into surgeries, sprains into weeks of confinement. Some hadn't survived, their deaths hidden behind settlements and silence. My stomach dropped as I read my own file. I wasn't healing from appendicitis at all because my appendix had been healthy. The surgery had been their first scam step, a hook to drag me deeper. Escape was the only option. That evening, when the night shift left fewer eyes watching, I dressed in the clothes Maria had brought and walked out like I belonged, heart hammering. I didn't stop until I reached the security office. Captain Morrison, the chief of security, eyed me like a nuisance at first. But when I spilled everything, the fake credentials, the fraudulent records, the insurance scams, his expression hardened. We've had suspicions, he admitted slowly. But Dr. Harrison's history has always checked out. If what you're saying is true. I gave him dates, names, files I'd memorized. That cracked the wall. He promised an investigation, warning me that law at sea was messy, crossing borders and authorities. But once the ship hit port, he'd move. The days crawled by, and with them came the unraveling. By the time we reached Miami, the truth exploded. Harrison wasn't a doctor. He was a predator in a white coat. For more than 5 years, he had roamed cruise ships, carving into passengers who trusted him, siphoning money with a practiced smile. He chose victims carefully, insured, wealthy, far from home, unlikely to question him in their vulnerability. The arrest came swift. Harrison was taken off in handcuffs, several of his nurses with him. The cruise line scrambled, drowning in lawsuits, forced to rebuild their entire medical system under scrutiny. Maria and I were left shaken but alive. My appendix, they confirmed, had been untouched until Harrison's knife. I had been lucky. Lucky my body survived. Lucky I'd overheard his greed before the next cut. Others hadn't. Some had died in those sterile halls, their stories buried beneath the ocean's silence. I walked off that ship carrying a scar that wasn't just physical. I had learned that even doctors, those we trust at our weakest, can be monsters when no one is watching. On a ship surrounded by endless water, the fear isn't just sickness, it's who's holding the scalpel. Cruise ship fraud is more common than anyone wants to admit. Out there, far from home, oversight crumbles. Patients, sick and scared, become prey. And by the time they realize the danger, the ship has sailed thousands of miles away. If you ever find yourself in that position, ask questions, demand proof, call home, because sometimes the worst danger isn't the illness inside you, it's the hands pretending to heal you.